Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nita Haribo, Haribo, Nita Go. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. A reading from Srimad, second canto, chapter 3, 11. Chapter 3, entitled Pure Devotional Service. Text 11. We'll go through the words. Etavan Eva Yagyatam Iha Nishvesya Udaya Bhagavati Achala Bhavaha Yat Bhagavat Sangataha Etavaneva Jagyatam Iha Nishe Yashodaya Bhagavat Yachalo Bhavo Yad Bhagavata Sangataha Etavaneva Yagyatam Iha Nishe Yashodaya Bhagavat Yachalo Bhavo Yad Bhagavata Sangataha Etavaneva Yagyatam Iha Nisheja Yojaya Bhagavad Yachalo Bhavo Yad Bhagavata Sangataha. Please repeat. Bhagavata chalo bhavo yad bhagavata sangha
Bhagavatam Iha Nishaya Sodayaha Bhagavatya Chalo Bhavo Yat Bhagavata Sangataha Ita Eva Iha Nishaya Sodayaha Bhagavatya Chalo Bhavo Yat Bhagavata Sangataha Ita Jayatam Iha Nishreya Srodaya Bhagavati Achalo Pavo Yar Bhagavata Sangataha
Etavaniv yajatam Iha Nishreya Sodayaha Bhagavatyachalo Bhavo Yad Bhagavata Sangataha
Etavaneva yajatam ihani shreyasodayaha bhagavatjachalo bhavo yad bhagavata sangataha
Etamaneva yajatam ihani shreyasodaya bhagavatya chalo bhavo yad bhagavata sangataha.
Etavan, all these different kinds of worshippers. Eva, certainly. Yagyatam, while worshipping. Iha, in this life. Nahi Shreyasya, the highest benediction. Udayaha, development. Bhagavati, unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Achala, unflinching. Bhavaha, spontaneous attraction. Yat, which, Bhagavata, the pure devotee of the Lord. Sangataha, association. Translation: all the different kinds of worshippers of multi-demigods can attain the highest perfectional benediction, which is spontaneous attraction, unflinchingly fixed upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by the association of the pure devotee of the Lord. Purport: Shri Shri Gaura Nitai Ki Jai. Purport: all the living entities in different statuses of life within the material creation, beginning from the first demigod Brahma down to the small ant, are conditioned under the law of material nature, or the external energy of the Supreme Lord. The living entity in his pure state is conscious of the fact that he is part and parcel of the Lord, but when he is thrown into the material world on account of his desire to lord it over material energy, he becomes conditioned by the three modes of material nature and thus struggles for the existence for the highest benefit. This struggle for existence is something like following the will-o'-the-wisp under the spell of material enjoyment. All plans for material enjoyment, either by worship of different demigods as described in the previous verses of this chapter, or by modernized advancement of scientific knowledge without the help of God or demigod, are illusory only. For despite all such plans for happiness and the conditioned living being, with the compass of material creation, can never solve the problems of life, namely birth, death, old age, and disease. The history of the universe is full of such plan makers, and many kings and emperors come and go, leaving a plan-making story only. But the prime problems of life remain unsolved despite all endeavors by such plan makers. Actually, human life is meant for making a solution to the problems of life. One can never solve such problems by satisfying the different demigods, by different modes of worship, or by so-called scientific advancement in knowledge, without the help of God or the demigods. Apart from the gross materialists who care very little either for God or for the demigods, the Vedas recommended worship of different demigods for different benefits, and so the demigods are neither false nor imaginary. The demigods are as factual as we are, but they are much more powerful due to their being engaged in the direct service of the Lord and managing different departments of the universal government. The Bhagavad Gita affirms this, and the different planets of the demigods are mentioned there, including one of the supreme demigods, Lord Brahma. The gross materialists do not believe in the existence of God or the demigods, nor do they believe that different planets are dominated by different demigods. They are creating a commotion about reaching this closest celestial body, Chandraloka, or the moon. But even after much mechanical research, they have only very scant information of this moon. And in spite of much false advertisement for selling land on the moon, the puffed up scientist or gross materialist cannot live there. And what to speak of reaching the other planets, which they are unable to even count. However, the followers of the Vedas have a different method of acquiring knowledge. They accept the statements of the Vedic literatures as authority in toto, as we have already discussed in Canto 1, and therefore they have full and reasonable knowledge of God and demigods of their different residential planets situated within the compass of the material world and beyond the limit of the material sky. The most authentic Vedic literature accepted by the great Indian acharyas like Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Vishnu Swami, Nimbarka, and Chaitanya, and studied by all important personalities of the world. In the Bhagavad Gita, in which we worship the demigods, in which the worship of the demigods in their respective residential planets are mentioned. The Bhagavad Gita 9.25 affirms Yanti deva vrata devan vritin yanti pratirvataha bhutani yanti bhuteja yanti madhya jitopimam. The worshippers of demigods reach the respective planets of the demigods, and the worshippers of forefathers reach the planets of forefathers. The gross materialist remains in the different material planets, but the devotees of the Lord reach the kingdom of God. We also have information from the Bhagavad Gita that all the planets within the material world, including Brahmaloka, are but temporarily situated, and after a fixed period they are all annihilated. Therefore the demigods and their followers are all annihilated at the period of devastation. But one who reaches the kingdom of God gets a permanent share in eternal life. That is the verdict of Vedic literature. The worshippers of the demigods have one facility more than the unbelievers due to their being convinced of the Vedic version, by which they can get information of the benefit of worshiping the Supreme Lord in the association of the devotees of the Lord. The gross materialist, however, without any faith in the Vedic version, remains eternally in darkness, driven by a false conviction on the basis of imperfect experimental knowledge, or so-called material science, which can never reach into the realm of transcendental knowledge. Therefore, unless the gross materialists or the worshippers of the temporary demigods come in contact with the transcendentalists, like the pure devotee of the Lord, their attempts are simply a waste of energy. Only by the grace of the divine personalities, the pure devotees of the Lord, can one achieve pure devotion, which is the highest perfection of human life. Only a pure devotee of the Lord can show one the right way of progressive life. Otherwise, both the materialistic way of life without any information of God or the demigods, and the life engaged in the worship of the demigods in pursuit of temporary material enjoyments are different phases of phantasmagoria. They are nicely explained in the Bhagavad Gita also, but the Bhagavad Gita can be understood in the association of pure devotees only, and not by the interpretations of politicians or dry philosophical speculators. Om Jnana Turandasya Jananjana Salakaya Chakshudun Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kedamayam Dadati Swapatantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sahajatam Sahagana Rabinatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sahadvaitam Savadutam Vijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Shmatidan Vego Swami Nityanamani Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Shmati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamani. Guru Maharaj, if you feel like you would like to speak anything on this verse, you're more than welcome, as you know. We would very much appreciate it. Okay, so the verse again is as follows: Etavan eva yavritam iha nisheya yashodaya bhagavatya chalo bhavo yad bhagavata sangataha. All the different kinds of worshippers or multi-demigods can attain the highest perfectional benediction, which is spontaneous attraction, unflinchingly fixed upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by the association of a pure devotee of the Lord. So this verse is highlighting and explaining that to worship the demigods, it may be considered still pious, but actually the only person who is worshipable is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Those who refuse to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, they may still take shelter of worshiping different demigods like Indra or Ganapati or various demigods that we hear, Lakshmi Devi, for different material benedictions, but ultimately this worship is deemed useless. This is because Krishna, he is sanctioning everything. It's not up to the demigods to grant benedictions on their own. They have no ability in themselves. They are just mere servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So you might as well, worship the Supreme Personality, Krishna, instead of going to the demigods or something. So it is better to worship the demigods in a sense than to just be a materialist who doesn't worship God at all, because as there's a term in the house of the Vedas, right? So somebody who refuses to worship Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he still makes some little advancement by worshiping the demigods, because he's paying respect to the devotees of the Lord in an indirect way, and indirectly in this way worshiping Krishna in some way, but although this is not the recommended process. So we can try to solve so many different problems, and we can try to speculate and make different arrangements in this material world. and solely just try to rely on our own ability and our own intelligence to manipulate matter in order to be comfortable. But we see that no matter how hard we work, no matter how much we can accumulate in this material world, it doesn't last forever. So to arrange a situation in the material world, thinking that it's eternal or thinking that you're going to have it for the rest of your life is very foolish business. Due to the, Krishna says, time, I am time I am, destroyer of all worlds. So due to Krishna and his time factor, time destroys anything that you accumulate within this material world. So it doesn't make much sense actually to strive for, a big house or nice luxuries, because in actuality, even the materialist who gains these things, he actually suffers more than somebody without it. And this is Krishna's mercy. For instance, somebody who is poor, he doesn't really long after money so much. He might need some money to survive or whatever, but versus the person who's already rich and loses it all, that person, he's way more disturbed. He's way more distraught due to time taking away his riches. So we can understand that anything you accumulate and all things that are sanctioned by the Lord for, material opulences that are appointed to one due to his karmic activity, the more you acquire, the more miserable you're ultimately going to become. So Srila Prabhupada has given us this society of simple living and high thinking. And in this way we can remain, with free from material distress and take shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord, and give credit where it's due, and know that actually everything that's being supplied to me is only by the mercy of the Lord. So there is no reason to think that I'm doing anything. It's a quite puffed up position to think that I'm the controller. I can, achieve this or I can achieve that. So an example that comes to mind of this is when the Chan Kazi was very angry from the kirtan parties. All the devotees were coming and they were holding kirtan procession throughout Navadvip. The Chan Kazi, he became very, very angry. And he began to break the different mridanga drums and, curse the devotees in that way. And as you can imagine, the devotees, they became very distressed and they were uneasy about this. This Chan Kazi, he was talking about banning kirtan throughout the whole area that he governed. And the devotees, they were like, how can he do this? This is horrible. So it's described how Srivas, behind closed doors, he was in a lot of distress, and he was worshiping Lord Nrsingadev behind closed doors, who will remove all obstacles in devotional life. And we'll hear many instances when devotees are in fear, they start chanting Namaste Narasimhaya Kaladadayane, because it actually removes these negative aspects and it removes all obstacles. So you can purely, pursue devotional service. So Srivas was worshiping Lord Nrsingadev behind closed doors. And all of a sudden, Lord Chaitanya, he was like a lion. He was totally enraged at Chan Kazi for trying to stop the kirtan. And he practically broke down Srivas's door, and he bursts in like a lion roaring. And he said, Srivas, that person you are worshiping, he is here now. And Lord Chaitanya, he took the the mood of Lord Nrsingadev, Ugra Nrsingadev, very, very angry and fierce mood towards the choices that Chandkazi was making. And in this way, he said, even if Chandkazi breaks the Mridanga drums, and even if he tries to stop the Kirtan party, what can he do? He's not independent. He only can do something by the sanction of my will. Right? Chandkazi, even if he decides to act independently against my will, against what I want to be done, he cannot get very far, because I will surely stop him. I will stop this rascal. You know? So this is an example. We can see that even if somebody who's completely inimical towards the chanting of Hare Krishna, he can do all he wants to try to stop it. But without the Lord's sanction, nothing can happen. There was a court case that was happening at some point. Somebody knows more details, they're welcome to share. But basically, the devotees, they were going out on Harinam, and it was said they were making some kind of disturbance or something, and there were some legal measures that were brought to the matter, and it went to court, and ultimately they can't do anything about it. These rascals who totally are inimical towards the Hare Krishna chanting, and they don't even want to hear it. They just think it's some ruckus in the streets. They can't stop it no matter how they try. So the court system, they deemed that it's our religious freedom to be able to chant and dance in ecstasy in the streets and distribute this literature. So there's a whole court case, and I believe Parmeshwar Prabhu, he has like a printout of this court case. So whenever he's distributing books and somebody tries to stop him, he will present them papers and show them that actually, this is my constitutional duty to, perform my religion, whether you're being disturbed by it or not. So the materialists, they, no matter what their plan making, if it's not sanctioned by God, they can't do anything. So it's mentioned that these demigods and the benefits, the material benefits from worshiping them, it's not false or imaginary. I had some personal experience of this before really visiting ISKCON temples. I was visiting many Hindu temples, and there was one that was maybe within 3 or 4 miles from where I was staying at the time, and I would walk there to get my daily sustenance of some prasad from the temple. And I basically like had no money. I went from having like a very opulent material situation, and I started basically like offering food to Krishna and worshiping Krishna and chanting his names. And he very quickly took basically everything away, which was really, really merciful. But so I was basically like going to the temple for my sustenance and chanting a lot. And there was a Shiva Linga here at this temple, and I would circumambulate it and chant the Maha Mantra and beg Lord Shiva, to grant me pure devotional service to his Lord. And it was about getting the time where I was going to head to the temple, and I only had one problem. I had some material possessions that I certainly could sell or give away, as I ended up doing, but in order to get here, like I needed to change my oil in my car, and I needed to fill my tank a few times to get here, and I virtually had no money, so I sat down one day, and it was a really cold winter day. It was in Michigan, and a bunch of snow on the ground, and I actually prayed, Lord Shiva, like, will you please just will you help me come across some kind of money so I can get to RVC, and basically by Lord Shiva's mercy, I exited the temple after some hours of chanting, and I looked down in the snow, and there was a $50 bill sitting there. I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is what I need. It's what I need to get there to RVC, And then I just, sold a couple of material possessions, got something like $50 more, and I was able to come here, So surely it was the mercy. So, these things are not imaginary, but if you're not doing it in the right mood, and if you're doing it thinking that this demigod, he is the same as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's just another form of God. This is what they were trying to tell me at these temples. There's a certain word for it that they wanted to use. They were saying like that Lakshmi is a female representation of God, of Krishna, of the Supreme, or Shiva is also God. Whatever form you want to take, you can worship like that. And I knew that, not to be the case. So, I was trying to get granted some permission to actually enter the Dham, to actually enter RVC. And, scripturally, I didn't necessarily know or understand that that's what you need to do actually in order to enter the Dham. You can't enter Vrindavan without getting the blessings from Shiva. You can't enter, the Dham without getting blessings from his pure devotees. And this is what Prabhupada continues to touch on in the end of this purport, where he mentions that only by the grace of divine personalities, the pure devotees of the Lord, one can achieve pure devotion, which is the highest perfection of human life. So ultimately, I had an experience before this where it was Maharaj's Vyasa Puja, and I had never, talked to Maharaj or anything, and I attended the Zoom, and I didn't know everyone was going to be given a chance to speak. So sure enough, I was given a chance to speak, and Maharaj, he asked whoever he was with, who is this? Is this Dr. Matthew at the time? And then he said, when are you coming? You should come as soon as you possibly can, so there I actually got the blessings of a pure devotee to come into the Dham and, take up devotional life full time. So due to the pure devotee's causeless mercy, he's so merciful on the most rascals like myself. He's the pure devotees, they just want for, the people to come to the stage where they can give everything to Krishna and worship him wholeheartedly. So it's really a truly amazing thing that, the devotees are doing. So there's different philosophical speculation that comes up in relation to this point, where some classes of men, they think that yes, we need to accept Guru, of course. Guru he's equal to God. He's not different than God himself, and he helps me attain perfection in life. And the Guru is just like a ladder, they say. You accept a Guru, and he will help you up the rungs of the ladder. And once you get to the top, you're on. You got where you need to go. So what do you need the ladder for? So you can throw the ladder out. It's useless. It's more or less garbage. And, you're at the top. So since the Guru is God, then, you're at the top and you're also God, So this is what the Mayavadis, they say. They say that because they want to become God, they say that the Guru is God and you worship him and he'll give you the ability to become God. So this is an incorrect conclusion that they're coming to. The real conclusion is, yes, we should actually worship the Guru, because we can't render our service properly without proper worship to the Guru and proper holding of his instructions on a very high level and taking them as our life and soul and getting his blessings. But we worship the Guru as a direct representative of God, not as God himself. So there's a big difference there. And there's a quote that Srila Prabhupada made. The only thing worse than underestimating the guru is overestimating the guru. So he was speaking on both of these are offenses. The underestimation of the guru is natural because we actually can't understand his glories. Shri Guru Charana Padma, we're worshiping his lotus feet. The lotus feet of the spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. So our relationship with the guru, it's always going to be in awe and reverence. It's not going to take on your original constitutional position of worship towards Krishna. We have to always have this mood of awe and reverence towards the guru, even though the relationship, it will hopefully develop into one of the higher rasas, it will seem, or some different qualities will be there. But ultimately, this awe and reverence, it needs to be topmost of our relationship with Guru, because it actually doesn't make sense. If you think about it, everybody needs a direct representative in order to get to Krishna. So if you are given a teacher to say you want to develop some, your constitutional position is to develop conjugal love with the Lord, right? One of the girlfriends of the Lord, or, like that. So if that's your relationship and you need a teacher to instruct you on how to do this, it actually doesn't make sense for you to develop a conjugal relationship with your teacher, does it? It doesn't actually quite make sense, because that's not the end goal. Your teacher, he's showing you how to develop this way of love for Krishna, but you'd be mixed up if you got involved in developing that love for the teacher, So in this way, we need to remember that the main mellow of relationship with the spiritual master is always going to be awe and reverence. And that the only way that we can actually attain perfection is by his blessings. And the only way that we can carry out our duty and make proper spiritual advancement is by, taking his instruction as our heart and our soul, and, giving him the proper respect. So we can underestimate. It's very easy to underestimate because we don't know the level that he's actually at. But if we're looking at him with this awe and reverential mood, then it's actually, it takes away this underestimation of the spiritual master, because you're saying, oh, your lotus feet, they're so special. I want to place them on my head. Everything, the dust that you walk on, I worship. That, your instruction is everything to me. And then the overestimation of the glories of give more credit due to the spiritual master, or proclaiming him to be God, that's even more offensive, Prabhupada says, because then it's subtly thinking us that I want to be God, and here's a person who has attained the position of God, and I'm going to use him so I can become God, and then kick him to the curb, once I'm God. So these are two ways that we can kind of avoid this overestimation of the spiritual master and underestimation of his glories. Otherwise, if we don't get the blessings of the spiritual master and we just render, some devotional service, we might become liberated, or we might become free from some material sufferings or certain karmic reactions, but we're not going to actually attain the goal of why we're here and what it is that we're meant to do. So are there any comments or questions on today's verse? Okay, great. Everyone understands. All right. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.